Welcome, everyone, to a new edition of G-Rated, where we talk about the latest movies and TV shows. I'm your host, Gerald Bourget, joined here by Max and Craig. And today we are talking about Oppenheimer, huge movie at the box office this weekend between Barbie and Oppenheimer. I was able to see both. I don't know if you guys were able to. We just did a G-Rated, me and Leah did, on Barbie. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. But this is the movie I'd been looking forward to all year. And for me, it lived up to the hype and then some. Guys, just your overall general thoughts on Oppenheimer.
Loved it. I mean, very much like you, was looking forward to Oppenheimer for a while now. I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan and what he's done, just the type of movies he does. So this one, honestly, didn't know fully what to expect. I tried not to watch too many trailers, read too much into it. And I mean, I think it really just blew me away, the movie.
Yeah, and it took the story in some directions maybe people wouldn't have expected if
Sure.
they knew the basic topic of the movie. This was this was definitely the movie I was looking forward to the most this year. But over the last few weeks, it's part of this almost effort by Hollywood to get people back to the big screen. Mission Impossible wasn't necessarily a great box office success, but it was a terrific movie. Barbie, obviously, and Oppenheimer on the same weekend. It's kind of cool to see this again. This is how I grew up. I like going to the big screen. I think it's an entirely different experience. And this movie definitely lived up to the hype.
I was going to say, like, this is the first time I've seen a movie in theaters in a while where you felt the rush of opening weekend, big movie feel. I saw it in IMAX and that thing was insane.
It not to overuse the Scorsese meme, but like I was watching, I was like, this is cinema. Like that's what it was. And it played into that as far as the way it was shot and the way that it's just an event that you have to go see in a movie theater for it to get the full effect. But and I love that just from the opening slide, like where it gives you the text about Prometheus, you're just like, oh my God, we're in for it right away. What made this movie so special? I know there are a number of things that really popped off the screen in terms of the casting, in terms of the cinematography. What stood out the most to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing, if you're going to have a movie with a 3-hour runtime, especially I don't want to be like that guy, but like in today's age where things are so much like it takes a lot to hold someone's attention for 3 hours, even in a like movie setting where you're not on your phone and all that stuff. I think it has to be incredibly well crafted. And they did a really good job of, I like how they're going chronologically throughout things. They have the flashbacks kind of snipped through in there. And then you bring it all together with just the visual effects and actually telling the story of Robert Oppenheimer. A lot that, I mean, even as someone who had casually kind of brushed off and knew who he was, I had no idea half the things that the movie even presented. So I think it just gave me another layer of who he was about, how everything came into play, and just see that all kind of combined together was beautifully done.
You know where I'm going to go with this because I always go here, and you mentioned storytelling.
Yes.
You have to have tight writing. It's the core of every good movie. If your writing falls off in any phase of the story, whether it's dialogue or the script, it's going to fall apart. And it didn't. It was tight. There's always moments in movies where I feel like this could have been edited out. This was unnecessary, or this could have been done better. They should have reshot this. I never had that experience. This definitely did not feel like a 3-hour movie.
No, it didn't. And I mean, I'm not a big guy on biopic movies, I'll be honest, because a lot of them feel lazy or they feel inaccurate or they just feel like, okay, we're trying to make money off of Elvis or whoever the hell we're going for
Freddie
this
Mercury
time.
Or Elton John or all those when that became popular.
There was like a wave of them for like a couple of years there where I was like, we're doing this again. But this one was one of the best and most thorough biopics that I've ever seen. And I know that a lot of people were maybe not aware it was going to be a biopic, and so they came in with different expectations as far as what the climax of the movie would be, what would be in the movie even. But I felt like it was so well done and so well acted. Like Cillian Murphy was, okay, I love Peaky Blinders, and this is up there with Tommy Shelby as far as the role of his career for me, because he brought so much to that person and the dilemma as far as like pursuing science and the inevitability that mankind would eventually discover and develop this bomb, and also the subsequent guilt over doing it and basically being the Prometheus that gave mankind
this ethical dilemma from the start. And complexity of character, right? How many of these movies would you see where it was a flat character? Here's our hero, here's our bad guy, and it's so obvious. It's again, goes back to writing. It's just terribly written when you when you create black and white. There's so much nuance. There's so much gray area within his character, and he brings it onto the screen. Yes, he is leading man for the Oscar right now.
I mean, you can see a lot of like the folly of what a genius presents himself, and it very much, in a way, the nature of it. You almost see these in like superhero movies of like, okay, you have this genius or this person blessed with absolute wonder or intelligence or whatever, and yet it's coupled together with, okay, the downfall of, grappling with humanity and grappling with these moral issues, something that you would see in these epic stories. And yet
being a womanizer. And being, thank you for making him human.
Yes, but it is one of those where very much like to tell it through a story of a biopic, like it's just well done.
Yeah. The ethical complexity at work there within his character, and especially near the end, was incredible. I do want to talk to you about that sequence, because everything leading up to the Trinity test and the way that the soundtrack accompanies it, and just the cinematography of that moment, and then the rally that he has afterwards, the giant American exceptionalism rally, basically.
Yes.
That was like peak Christopher Nolan, that whole extended sequence, because it just, you just had an atomic bomb go off, and yet the sound of the pounding of feet on the ground was just as like affecting, and that whole sequence was just kind of terrifying. And it takes a masterful filmmaker to make those two things each feel unique and powerful in that way.
What was your emotional reaction throughout that sequence?
It was so, and this is something I wanted to address, because there has been one of the big criticisms that's been leveled against this movie has been that it didn't depict the bombs going off in Japan, and some people are seeing that as like a way of brushing past the victims. And in my mind, I felt like showing it through, because it is a biopic, first of all, about one man and the internal struggle and dilemma that he faced after creating this weapon of mass destruction. And I felt like showing it in that way was far more affecting than cut to Japan and a bunch of random people that haven't been in the movie.
Right.
And we're just going to show them incinerated to death.
Yeah. And suddenly their humanity is going to become apparent to us, even though they had no face before that.
Right.
Completely agree with you. Like, what bothers me about those critiques, this is not journalism. This is art, okay? So you cannot possibly appease all of those critics' voices that want to see this element in the movie, or this. There have been criticisms that they didn't depict the damage that it did in New Mexico.
Yes.
That's a discussion. That's an important discussion that can be had after this movie. But to try and satisfy all of those voices is impossible. And if you try to do it, the film's going to fall apart. It's going to be a disaster.
Right. It did more service, I think, to the horror of the situation, of the imperialism, of the American exceptionalism, to have some of those moments like the rally where he's giving and he hears the pounding feet, he sees the flashing lights, he sees the girl with the face melted off.
Right.
He steps into the incinerated body. That shows it in a far more affecting way than just randomly showing thousands of people murdered that had not been in the movie. To that, if anything, feels like it's like not glorifying it, but it's casting it in a weird light as just kind of a service. And I don't agree with that. And I feel like, especially like even the throwaway line from the Secretary of War when they were discussing which cities to bomb, and he said, "Oh no, not Kyoto, like because of its cultural importance to the Japanese people, and also my wife and I honeymoon." Like that line is so dark and so effective because it's not showing it's not telling you, it's showing you in this really weird way, in a way you wouldn't expect. One of the other criticisms against this movie, the lack of fully developed or even half developed female characters.
Yeah.
And this is a complaint that's been lobbied against Christopher Nolan repetitively in his movies, and it's something that he seriously needs to work on. Emily Blunt was phenomenal when she was given chances to do anything.
Very few chances.
But I think it was something like 20 or 30 minutes into the movie is the first time that like Florence Pugh was in it at all. And it's very quickly a sex scene. Like, that is a valid criticism, I feel like. I don't know if that stood out to you guys while you were watching it at all. But.
It definitely did for me. With Emily Blunt in particular, who I've watched in multiple movies, I kept waiting for, okay, when is she going to be more than this rebel who rides horses? And
right.
the scene at the table when she's sitting in on the hearing or whatever the proper term is for it.
Right.
They finally unleashed her, and then they cut that short too. I felt like I wanted more of that.
Yes, she
when
just
she was
eviscerated
undressing
that
them.
guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
but then they cut it off, and that was it. That was it for Emily Blunt. They never allowed her to be a significant part of this movie.
Right. I mean, especially even like Florence Pugh's character, someone who, by all accounts had such an impact on Robert Oppenheimer's actual real life. The fact that you only get bits and pieces, and yes, so much of it is, oh, well, cool, we're, surrounding it by sex scenes and adultery and everything like that. It doesn't really let you go into the world of, again, what drove, I don't want to say drove this guy to madness, but it doesn't give you the full snippet of why he was so conflicted in so many ways.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Another criticism as far as the way it kind of glossed over the displaced Hispanic and indigenous people of New Mexico that were basically rooted and moved by the government. I feel like that probably maybe deserved more than a throwaway line, but again, I feel like these stories about the victims deserve to have their story told not through the lens of their victimizers. And I feel like that's what it would have been with the Japanese people being incinerated, with these people being displaced. I felt like the way that it handled everything in making it very clear that he was the Prometheus of this story. He gave mankind the power to destroy itself. And I think there is a very valid conversation to be had about those stories deserving...
An important conversation that should be had.
Yes.
You want to know the aftermath? Read John Hershey's Hiroshima. You want to know what the aftermath looked like. It's graphic.
Right.
And it's important to know that, because part of this movie, you talked about the scenes where they're stomping their feet. It was American Exception. Look, we won. We're great. And wow, are we even considering what happened here? Now you can certainly look at what Imperial Japan was doing in Southeast Asia at the time. There was basically I'm not even gonna say that basically there was a Holocaust going on in Southeast Asia that claimed probably as many victims as the actual Holocaust, but it doesn't get talked about. There were horrific things happening in their internment camps, their experiments, chemical weapons they were using. So if you want to justify it that way, saying we need to, I don't know that those were the justifications we were using. We just wanted to end the war. Right. We wanted to save our own lives. But there was a lot of bad stuff. So you could say, hey, this was probably a good thing for Southeast Asia. But again, the victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not the people perpetrating those crimes. So there were real victims in those situations. And at some point, it's important to acknowledge them, even if not in this film.
Yes, and that's the larger conversation that needs to be had is, okay, these are the stories that also need to be told, and they need to be told in equally grand scale as something like this. And that I think is a valid conversation. But in terms of a critique of the film itself, like, this is a biopic. It was about one man and what he created and those impacts. And that's how it played out in the last 45 minutes or so, because the climax of the movie is the test, but it's not like the end. Normally you think climax is, and you got like 20 minutes to wrap up after that. That's not how this was at all. Did the last 45 minutes, did they still resonate with you the same, given that you get to this emotional peak of the movie, and then from there it's kind of focused on the bureaucracy and the kind of the rivalries?
No, I mean, I very much think it still resonated with me. I think when you go into a movie like this, yes, the natural conclusion would be, okay, cool, the climax is the metaphorical and literal, like, big bang of the movie. I still go back to, I like how you keep on telling the story of the aftermath, the fact that how his career has unfolded, how he's looked at throughout history, and in retrospect of how the United States government essentially tried to pick him apart in order to, for many different themes there, going back to, patriotism. Oh, is this guy a communist? Like, all these different themes that I actually found very entertaining. And honestly, I could have watched a little bit more, even if they decide to expand upon that, further than 40 minutes.
It was fascinating just to ponder the paradox of what we were watching. American exceptionalism, supposedly what we stood for was freedom, liberty, and yet the idea of exchanging ideas with other cultures and sharing ideas was you're a traitor. You're committing treason.
Right. I think those ironies were lost on some people that had that complaint. I think all of it served that purpose. And also, just like on a more surface level, just getting to sit back and watch some of these people cook, because like Christopher Nolan got career defining performances out of like probably 6 or 7 different people.
We haven't mentioned Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. is a lock to me so far for supporting actor. Like, he was incredible. And it's nice because in Marvel movies that he's great as Iron Man, but you forget that this dude can act.
Yeah.
Like, so that was cool to see. Emily Blunt, we already mentioned, she was terrific. Rami Malek was on the screen for like 2 minutes and made the most of it.
Yep.
So the casting in this was phenomenal as well. Let's talk about the bomb sequence, because I feel like that test, another complaint that I saw was that the bomb going off was silent, obviously, because in real life, that's how it was. They saw it before they could hear it because they were miles away.
Because light travels faster than sound.
Yes, that's
science, in case you didn't know.
That's how the science works. What did you guys think of that whole build-up and then the final, like, just the scene of the fumes and everything? The ignition itself was incredible to me.
Yeah, I'm just blown away by it. They nailed it. That's all I would say. They nailed it. It was spectacular.
I wouldn't change a damn thing. There are so, I think oftentimes in cinema you feel like you have to overload or overwhelm the audience, whether it's sound or sight or whatever, and in order to feel things you have to have a lot of stimulus coming at you, and they did. And they and
American cinema, absolutely.
and they
Where's my car chases were
and I mean, as like, I would say impactful and powerful as that actual moment was in like real life, in a cinematic sense, like that sequence, just the pure beauty of the silence, of watching Oppenheimer's reaction, of just the stillness of that moment, like from a cinema nerd standpoint, I would let me live in that moment for a hot second and just watch that beauty. That was impeccable.
And it's crazy to call it beauty, but it was. It was a beautiful sequence, almost black and white.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the funny thing is, like, I was when it's like you're doing the countdown and you hear him go off, I don't know why, but you're initially thinking like, okay, here comes a big boom, and it's like Christopher Nolan, bang, 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 and then he just cuts out everything, and you're just sitting there for like 30 seconds or whatever in awe, and you're just like, wow, I'm getting goosebumps right now, man.
I think it's so effective because it is so counterintuitive, because you think bomb, you're expecting to be right there and hear it. And instead, I love I don't even know if you can call it symbolism, because it's true to life as far as how far back they were, but it's also symbolic in a way because of this race to get this bomb built, to accomplish this thing, to have this breakthrough. And you just have this 30 seconds where you see it and you don't quite feel the effects just yet. You don't hear the sound. You don't get hit with the wind or the blast just yet. And it's that like 30 seconds or so of horrific beauty that you're mesmerized by. And then you get hit with kind of the real life repercussions of it. And it's just a teaser for what's going to come. Yeah. I thought that was genius, the way that they handled that. And obviously true to life as well. If this was a Michael Bay movie, we would have been in the bomb. It would have been
Transforming when it popped out.
Yes, not quite the same level.
Don't throw too much shade at Michael Bay though. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love The Island. I'll be honest. A lot of people don't like it. I love The Island. But any complaints or criticisms aside from the thin female characters?
Well, I think we covered them really, and I the others, aside from his historic inability to develop female characters. The other criticisms, again, I think they're points of discussion that come after the movie. I don't agree with some of the critiques that they needed to be included in the movie. I think, again, they're important discussions to have afterward, but you can muddy a movie if you try and pack too much into it, and I think that would have been the case here.
No, kind of echoing what you guys are saying. Nothing really too critical other than a lot of the stuff that's been discussed. But I think even a lot of things there, it's not a documentary. It is a movie, and if you're telling it through a documentary lens, this is very different. And we're not talking about this in the same awe and wonder. We're having a very more serious discussion and whatnot. But that's not what this movie was or was ever supposed to be.
Right. Not a documentary, not a war film. It is a biopic through and through, and it is one of the best ones that I've ever seen. Anything else that we should bring up before we get to our final scores?
Boy, I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think so. Oof. All right. Out of 10, what would you give Christopher Nolan's latest?
Wasn't I on this show earlier doing another review?
You were?
Yeah. Boy, this was... You just said this, and I said this to my wife last night. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen. So, and I can't give perfect scores because... So I'm going to go 9.5 again.
Okay, there we go.
The last time.
Yeah, for the bear.
The bear.
Yeah, I mean, man, this was like, but by far, myself, all my friends who have seen it, everyone's saying this is by far Christopher Nolan's best movie. I'm really trying to remember. I don't know if it was the in-theater experience, the IMAX experience, the opening day, which I haven't gotten excited about a movie in a while. I have not been captivated by a movie like that really in a while. I'm giving that a 9.5 as well. That was truly one of the best films I've seen.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not my favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but from a technical standpoint, I think it is his best, if that makes sense. You know, for me as a Batman guy, The Dark Knight will always be one of my favorite movies ever.
That's very fair.
But in terms of just the cinematography, the acting, the direction, the filmmaking, like this is unparalleled, I would say, honestly, in terms of being a biopic and what it depicted and the intelligent way it went about it. So I'm at a 9.5 out of 10 as well. Again, I'd have a hard time giving out perfect 10s unless it's something that's just absolutely absurd. But this was up there for me, and yeah, I'm glad for him, and I'm glad for cinema because this weekend was really cool to see. You know, people all dressed up in pink and people all excited to see Oppenheimer and just the success that
so
both
many
had.
little girls dressed up in pink and white for the
yes.
It reminded me what the weekend was about. As I'm like critiquing the Barbie movie, then I'm seeing this, I'm like, oh yeah, children.
And then conversely, I saw like freaking like teenage dudes who are around the 17-year-old limit were like doing the classic meme of like the two kids up on each other's shoulders and the trench coats being like, one ticket, please.
Yes. It was fantastic. And it's cool to see that like Hollywood, that people want original ideas. They don't want Fast 12. They don't want all of these sequels and reboots and premakes. Like it's nice to see refreshing.
That hurt Mission Impossible, by the way, even though it may have been the best MI.
I think it did, and I haven't seen it, but I think the fact that they released 1 week before these two movies was like a death sentence. I have no idea why they set it up for failure like that.
I am tired of all these franchises, though. Yeah, original ideas, please.
Yep,
right.
They were both original,
and we say that as Barbie is probably going to be greenlit immediately for a sequel and multiple spinoffs.
Yeah, it's probably true. I do want a T-shirt that says "I'm Knuff."
No, they have the hoodie. They do sell the hoodie online. But I think that's going to do it for this edition of G-Rated. You can follow me at Gerald Bourget. You can follow Max at Max David Simpson. And you can follow Craig at Craig S. Morgan on Twitter or X or whatever they're going to call it next week. Until next time, keep it G-Rated.